Every year, millions of tourists walk these same paths: national parks, ancient ruins, tropical beaches. But these 5 travelers stepped into these crowded places and then simply vanished, leaving behind no screams, no witnesses, no trace. Their final moments seemed perfectly ordinary. Here's 5 tourists who vanished in popular tourist spots. Story 1. On a warm June afternoon in 2013, visitors at Mesa Verde National Park wandered through ancient cliff dwellings, scenic overlooks, and well-marked trails. But somewhere beyond the crowded viewpoints and familiar tourist paths, a quiet walk taken by one man turned into a mystery that no one could explain. In a place visited by millions, he stepped away for only a moment and never returned. Dele Stehling was born on September 10, 1961, and lived a simple, steady life with his wife, Dele, in Texas. He spent 17 years working as a meat cutter for Dick's Meat Market before continuing his career at HEB, eventually becoming a market manager. After retiring, Dele enjoyed tending his garden, caring for his home, and spending time with the people he loved. Dele worked as a pediatric nurse, and together they built a warm, family-centered life filled with routine, laughter, and comfort. Friends and relatives remember Dele as someone with an unforgettable presence. They describe his long, meandering walks, his room-filling laugh, and the way he shared vegetables from his thriving garden with neighbors. He loved tinkering, music, and the simple joy of being outdoors. The trip to Colorado was meant to be a peaceful escape, a chance for Dele, his wife, and his elderly parents to unwind together and explore historic sites across the Southwest. For those who knew him, the idea that anything could go wrong on such a gentle vacation seemed unthinkable. On June 9, 2013, Dele, his wife, and his parents visited Mesa Verde National Park, home to the famous cliff dwellings of the ancestral Puebloans. Their stop for the afternoon was the Spruce Tree House Overlook, one of the busiest and most accessible points in the entire park. Dele told his wife he wanted to take a short hike to the park's Spruce Tree House, a 130-room archaeological site with 8 ceremonial chambers, known as kivas, and would be back soon. He left his phone, wallet, and all his belongings in the car, a clear sign he expected to be gone only briefly. Witnesses later recalled seeing him walking alone on the Petroglyph Point Trail, a moderately challenging loop that is well marked and heavily trafficked. Hundreds of tourists walk that path the same day. No one reported seeing a man in distress, wandering off trail, or struggling in the heat. Hours passed with no sign of him. As evening approached, concern turned to fear. Dale's wife reported him missing, and rangers launched an immediate search before nightfall. Over the next several days, search teams combed the area using dogs, drones, and ground crews. Rangers interviewed hikers, checked trail logs, and analyzed the route Dele was believed to have taken. Despite the popularity and visibility of the trail, there were no footprints, clothing, or signs of an accident. It was as if he had stepped into the trees and vanished. For years, the mystery grew. But in September 2020, everything changed. An anonymous tip sent to the National Park Service tip line led investigators to a remote area of Mesa Verde. On September 17, 2020, U.S. Park Rangers, an ISB special agent, and the Montezuma County Coroner's Office located human remains and personal items approximately 4.2 miles from the point where Dele was last seen. A medical examiner later confirmed they were the remains of Mitchell Dale Stehling, How he traveled so far off trail and what happened during that time remains unknown. For Dale's family, the discovery brought both heartbreak and clarity. They spent years searching, hoping, and holding on to the belief that answers would someday surface. His children and grandchildren continue to honor him through stories, shared memories, and the simple joys he loved: gardening, music, and family gatherings. Even with the final confirmation, the mystery surrounding his disappearance remains a quiet ache that will never fully fade. What led Dale so far beyond the trail he intended to walk was something overlooked that might explain how a brief stroll turned into a 7-year mystery. Story 2. In the heart of Guatemala, the ancient Mayan ruins of Tikal rise from dense jungle, a UNESCO World Heritage Site filled with towering temples and the sounds of wildlife. Tourists often wander among the paths and plazas, but the remoteness of the park can make it easy to disappear. In 2023, one American visitor vanished while exploring this historic landscape, leaving only questions behind. Raymond Vincent Ashcroft, 66, was an American birdwatcher and avid traveler, known for his curiosity, patience, and love of nature. He frequently visited remote and historically rich sites. Ashcroft was described by friends as adventurous, calm, and deeply thoughtful, with a fascination for ancient cultures and wildlife alike. He traveled with his wife of 40 years, Van Fung, and often sought experiences that combined history with natural exploration. On February 3, 2023, Ashcroft visited Tikal National Park as part of a birdwatching group, while his wife paused and stayed with the group to photograph birds and an alligator. Raymond decided to return to the hotel alone. When Fung returned to the hotel, her husband was nowhere to be found. He never arrived. Authorities were notified at 2 p.m., and a search party consisting of police, tourist authority agents, and soldiers was dispatched immediately. Witnesses confirmed that he had been wearing a lilac shirt, shorts, and sandals. Despite the park being a popular destination, the dense jungle and remote trails made locating him challenging. Sniff dogs were brought in to search the area, but the dense vegetation hindered their efforts. Weeks passed without any sightings or evidence. Interpol issued a yellow notice to assist in locating Ashcroft, but no additional leads surfaced. Guatemalan authorities conducted extensive searches immediately after his disappearance, exploring trails, temples, and jungle areas near the park. Despite the swift response, no trace of Ashcroft or his belongings was found for months. Theories included disorientation, a fall in the rugged terrain, or a rare encounter with wildlife, but no evidence supported any single conclusion. Almost 2.5 years later, residents of a nearby village discovered human bones and clothing matching those worn by Ashcroft in dense jungle approximately 14 kilometers from the archaeological site. The remains were in a location accessible only on foot. Authorities, including personnel from the Attorney General's Office for Crimes Against Foreign Tourists, recovered the items, and DNA testing was initiated to confirm his identity. The subsequent discovery of bones and clothing provided some answers, but raised more questions. How did he reach that remote location? Was it accidental, or could another factor have contributed? The slow and difficult search through dense vegetation underscores the challenges of investigating disappearances in such remote areas. Van Fung and Ashcroft's friends have continued to seek answers. His disappearance prompted an international search and heightened awareness of the park's hazards. Loved ones remember Raymond as patient, thoughtful, and deeply connected to nature. The uncertainty of his fate for more than 2 years was a heavy burden, highlighting the emotional toll of such mysterious disappearances. Did Raymond simply become disoriented in the dense jungle as he returned to the hotel? Could the remote paths and hidden terrain of Tikal hold clues that remain undiscovered? Story 3. Grand Cayman Island, a tropical paradise famous for its turquoise waters, coral reefs, and serene beaches, attracts countless visitors each year. Its open seas and inviting snorkeling spots appear safe, yet, even in the calmest waters, unforeseen dangers can occur. In 2015, one American tourist vanished during a snorkeling excursion, leaving family and local authorities baffled. Norman Lee, 47, was a talented comic book artist from Weymouth, Massachusetts. A lifelong fan of comics, he graduated from Southeastern Massachusetts University in 1990 with a degree in illustration design, and eventually worked as an illustrator for Marvel and DC Comics for 20 decades, contributing to popular series such as Wolverine Annual, Deadpool, Spyboy, Marvel Adventures Spider-Man, and Wolverine and the X-Men. Lee was known for his warm, approachable personality. Within minutes of meeting him, people felt as though they had known him for years. He was married to Jan for 5.5 years and had become a second father to her children. Friends and family describe him as thoughtful, gentle, and full of humor, with a passion for creativity and storytelling. On Thursday, March 5, 2015, Lee and his wife were enjoying a snorkeling excursion approximately 250 yards offshore. Their vacation to Grand Cayman was the first he had taken in 10 years. Planned as a relaxing getaway with his wife, at some point they became separated. His wife assumed he had returned to shore when he was no longer visible. Local authorities noted that strong currents in the area often carry swimmers farther out than expected. Lee was last seen near the channel markers, separating the outer waters from the inner reef-protected waters. Volunteers and local divers joined the search, covering large areas in the days following his disappearance. Despite the efforts, no trace of Lee or his gear was found. Rescue teams continued to treat the operation as an active search, while the family and authorities held on to hope for closure. The Royal Cayman Islands Police, along with volunteer divers and the local diving community, conducted an extensive search of both inner and outer waters. Officials reported the currents were strong, presenting a significant challenge for anyone in open water. Hypotheses included accidental drowning, being swept out to sea, or encountering underwater obstacles, yet there was no evidence to confirm any scenario. Authorities reviewed local CCTV, maritime traffic records, and interviewed witnesses, but the open sea and limited visibility complicated the investigation. Despite the extensive search, the lack of physical evidence left the circumstances of Lee's disappearance largely unexplained. Lee's wife, Jan, and his extended family continued to honor his memory, sharing stories about his creative legacy, kind nature, and the joy he brought to those around him. Friends recall his warmth, humor, and dedication to family, preserving his presence in their lives. For John, the search became both a quest for answers and a way to remain connected to her husband's memory. The community expressed support, emphasizing the importance of hope, while acknowledging the painful uncertainty of the ongoing disappearance. Could Norman have been carried farther out by the strong currents, beyond the reach of rescuers? Might new information one day reveal the exact circumstances of his disappearance in these waters? Story 4. In the quiet village of Hallstatt, Austria, tourists come to enjoy the serene lake, alpine streams, and charming streets. Yet even here, where nature and history meet, mysteries can unfold. On July 6, 2016, Sister Eileen Christie, 72, vanished shortly after checking into a boarding home, leaving her belongings behind and sparking concern from her family, friends, and religious community. Sister Eileen Christie was a beloved theology teacher, nun, and avid traveler. Born in the United States, she dedicated nearly 5 decades to teaching in Catholic schools in the Diocese of Rockville Center, New York, inspiring generations of students with her warmth, intelligence, and faith. Known for her adventurous spirit, she spent about half of her summers traveling across Europe, especially Austria, Croatia, and northern Italy. Christie was described as a free spirit, energetic and athletic even at 72, quick to laugh, an avid bridge player, and someone who loved swimming and hiking. Her family and colleagues remember her as friendly, thoughtful, and always in motion. Someone who cherished independence but remained deeply connected to her loved ones and religious community. On July 6, 2016, Sister Eileen arrived in Hallstatt and checked into House Jodler, a hostel she had frequented for the past 3 summers. She sent an email to her nephew, William Frieda, confirming her safe arrival. Over the next several days, the emails abruptly stopped. She was scheduled to arrive in Innsbruck, Austria on July 9th, but never checked in. Her possessions, including her passport, wallet, and personal items, remained in her room. CCTV and hostel staff confirmed she had been there only on her arrival day. Several days before her disappearance, she had taken a cell phone video from a bridge over an alpine stream, reflecting her enjoyment of the surroundings. By July 11th, her nephew, realizing something was wrong, contacted the hostel and Austrian authorities, prompting a search that included lakes, streams, trails, and nearby mountains. Local police in Hallstatt, assisted by the U.S. Embassy, conducted searches of the lake and surrounding terrain, considering the possibility that her love for swimming might have led her into danger. Authorities examined her photographs, videos, and travel itinerary, but found no additional clues. Theories ranged from accidental injury while hiking or swimming to a rare voluntary disappearance, though nothing was substantiated. Her familiarity with the area and extensive travel experience made her sudden disappearance especially perplexing, despite diligent efforts, including searching the alpine streams and paths she frequented. Authorities found no trace of her. Sister Eileen's family, religious community, and former students were deeply affected. Prayers and vigils were held, including a service at St. Anthony of Padua Church in East Northport, New York, attended by over 200 people. Her nephew, William Frieda, remained actively involved, coordinating with the police and embassy to follow every lead. Friends and colleagues emphasized her vibrant energy, adventurous spirit, and dedication to teaching, holding on to hope while acknowledging the worry that grew with each passing day. Her community continues to honor her life, celebrating her years of service and impact on students while longing for answers. Did Sister Eileen have a misstep while swimming or hiking near Hallstatt's alpine streams? Could her disappearance involve circumstances that were completely unforeseen despite her experience and care? Story 5. In the summer of 2002, a peaceful stretch of the South Pacific became the center of a mystery that stunned both the sports world and seasoned sailors. Former NBA star Bison Dele set off on what should have been a quiet voyage aboard his catamaran, surrounded by people he knew well and waters he had traveled before. But somewhere between one island and the next, the boat went silent, and the calm ocean transformed into a place filled with unanswered questions. Brian Carson Williams, known professionally as Bison Dele, was born on April 6, 1969, in Fresno, California. He rose to fame as a gifted NBA center, earning a championship with the Chicago Bulls before shocking fans by retiring at just 30 years old. He traded arenas and cameras for a quieter life, pursuing travel, music, and personal freedom over celebrity. Bison was deeply close to his partner, Serena Carlin, and maintained an uneven but complicated relationship with his older brother, Miles DeBoard. Friends described Bison as gentle, introspective, and happiest when living simply. Often sailing, exploring remote places, and embracing a life far removed from fame. On July 6, 2002, Bison set sail from Tahiti on his catamaran, the Hakuna Matata, with Serena, Miles, and their captain, Bertrand Saldo. Conditions were calm, the route was familiar, and the trip was expected to be routine. 2 days later, Serena made a small ATM withdrawal on the neighboring island of Moorea, the last confirmed trace of the group. After that moment, all communication ceased. There were no radio calls, no distress messages, and no sightings of the vessel. Weeks later, Miles returned to the United States alone, using Bison's passport and personal documents. When authorities questioned him about the missing group, he fled across several states. Before he could be interviewed, Miles went into a diabetic coma after an overdose of insulin and later died, leaving investigators without the only person who might have known what happened aboard the Hakuna Matata. The boat was later found repainted and stripped of identifying details. No trace of Bison, Serena, or Captain Saldo was ever discovered. Authorities from the United States and French Polynesia opened a joint investigation, tracing bank records, flight logs, and the altered condition of the Hakuna Matata. Friends and investigators questioned why Miles had returned alone, and why he had attempted to access Bison's financial accounts. One theory suggests a confrontation occurred at sea, possibly linked to long-standing tensions within the family. Another proposes that an accident took place, and Miles panicked and attempted to cover it up. A third theory focuses on the altered catamaran and forged documents, raising the possibility that the disappearance was intentional and planned. With Miles gone, investigators reached a standstill. No remains, no debris, and no definitive evidence have ever been found. Bison's family and friends have spoken over the years about their pain and confusion, remembering him as a kind spirit who simply wanted a peaceful life. Serena Carlin's loved ones continue to honor her memory, describing her as warm, adventurous, and devoted. Captain Saldo's relatives, too, have long awaited answers that never arrived. Without physical evidence or eyewitness accounts, families of all three victims have had to cope through remembrance and community support, holding on to stories, photos, and the hope that someday clarity may emerge. What if the calm waters of the Pacific hit a moment that changed the fate of everyone on board before anyone on land sensed something was wrong? What if the truth of that final voyage remains known only to the ocean itself, still carrying secrets no investigation could uncover? Across national parks, oceans, ancient cities, and quiet European towns, these 5 lives remind us how quickly a peaceful moment can become a mystery. Families continue to wait for answers, hoping that time, or someone who remembers a small detail, may finally bring resolution. Until then, their stories remain open, held with care and remembrance. This is Vanished Stories, where the missing are never forgotten.